Welcome to today's stream, everybody. I got a nice little tip here for you on this one. So this is an image I created using Midjourney, and what I'm going to use it for is to show a couple of techniques in which I, for work, do some renderings and I have to add or remove elements. I'm going to go over adding, but removing is pretty neat too with the new Photoshop beta features of generative fill. So I'm going to do it first in Photoshop, and then I'm going to show how I would have done it before that generative fill feature, which in some situations I would still go and do. So make sure I got my chat open and let's get right into it. So this is just a preview image. Here we have it within Photoshop, and I need to open it in Photoshop beta, because we don't yet have the feature here, but as we've been doing, or as you might have seen, you select an area and then you have an option for generative fill. In this case, I have options for selecting or modifying my boundary and adding different adjustment layers or masks, or with the paint bucket. And all that is still present in the Photoshop beta version. However, they've added a little button all the way on the left for generative fill. So here we have the Photoshop beta version, and I'm going to drop my image right into here. And if I select an area where I want a vehicle, like say if what I want to do to the scene, right, for comparison on both, I want to add a car right here and perhaps a character right in front as well, right? So if I wanted to add a car here in Photoshop, I have the selection done here. I can modify my selection a little bit by going right here and doing some feathering. So I can feather out for a radius of 15. That's just going to soften that border and kind of bleed out a little bit outside of that selection area, just so it fades the image as it needs to. So I can do generative fill, and I'd like to say futuristic DeLorean car, cyan and magenta colors. Usually I find with the Photoshop or generative fill feature, it's a lot better with less words. The more direct and the more specific you are in the least amount of words, the better. Sometimes less specific, if anything. So like, see, like that looks nothing like a DeLorean. It gave it horns. So we'll go through some options. That's not bad. That fits in pretty good, although it is pretty worn down. That's not bad at all either. So what I really like about the generative fill feature, and this is way better than what I expected to see today, but what I like about this feature is it actually matches the style of your image. So if this were a photo, it would have been much more photoreal. But because it picks up on the fact that it's sort of an illustration or 3D artwork, it's gone with that style, like that level of quality or fidelity or technique or whatever you want to call it. But cool, it adds that in as a new layer with a mask. So if I were to disable the mask, we'd see that it's just the selection area that it basically messed with. And it kept most of the boundary, yeah, or pretty much all of it, and faded very, very nicely. So I want to add my character. So this I've had way less success with in the past. So if I add a character right here, let's do that feather technique again. 15 pixels is fine. And I'm going to add in a character with a mohawk and the hoodie facing away. And see what we get there. This is definitely a lot faster than the Blender technique, but the Blender technique does have its advantages as well, and we'll get into that. But, to just get it nice, quick, and dirty, this is pretty good. Yeah, characters I haven't seen much success with on this generative fill version. That's not terrible. Let's just regenerate it again, possibly taking away some words the next round. Sometimes I've had to go like 3 or 4 attempts to get one option. That's like fine. All right. So yeah, not great to work with, but let's say I used this one. Even the placement's like weird. mean, this might be my best option. If I do my object selection tool, put that around the character, it should snap to it pretty well. You see it highlights it all right. So I'll click there to get that selected, do a little feathering again. 15 pixels is fine. And, oh, 15 pixels may be too much. Let's do like 2 pixels. So now I can kind of move him into place. I think like around there is good. Control Shift I, inverse that selection. B for brush. I'm gonna take it down with the brackets, and then with black on the mask layer, I'm just gonna start fading out those hard edges so we get some of the original image back, and we have our character more or less repositioned. I don't want to get too close to those lines, but I do have to get there in between. I hate painting pixels. Sometimes it comes to that. All right. I don't hate it. And I do feel like I'm doing something. Like the AI hasn't completely taken over the process. Okay. I mean, that's way better placed. He is missing a head. Can we add a head? We should try a better shape. Let's see. I wish I gotta get myself a Wacom. I have a Wacom at work, and at home I typically just use the iPad, but I've learned that at this point, like, having both would be a dream. Let's see. Add a head. You can also do commands. That's kind of what I wanted to show here before we move on to Blender. So you can kind of highlight an area and be like, get rid of this. And it might do a pretty decent job. Or replace this with such and such. Oh God, it's looking at us. Well, okay. I'll go with that. But we'll add a layer on top. Hit a brush again. Sample a purple color. And I'm gonna brush that in over those yellow pixels and set my layer to color. Okay. Is it weird still? It's pretty weird. It's like make it look more like headphones. Okay. Doesn't look like headphones anymore. Some type of futuristic thing. Maybe it has. I add a layer, and I sample some of this peachy orange tone, and I give him a visor. Okay. Yeah, right? Future, whatever. I mean, all right, so that's been what, just a few, like 10 minutes to just like get some elements added in. Now, if you would have done this before, like maybe you could do it in 10 minutes, but you're searching for the right car, you're compromising or making decisions, or maybe you have a library of presets built. This is all unique to like this one image, and it did a lot of, I mean, yeah, just the amount of time you spend like relighting things that you bring in to make it match more is a lot. Let's save this file. Which I could do some of that here onto it as well if I add another layer even. Where's the head? That's the head. This is the body. I add a new layer over the body and make it into a clipping mask, and I can do a soft brush. Sample like some of this blue. That should be adding in some light over the front of it. That is way too much. I'm gonna just barely hit it with the edge of the brush. There we go. You see there's parts of the mask that are kind of messed up. I'm gonna add another layer over the head and give it its own clipping mask. I know I'm not naming my layers, how dare I. Might as well merge those visor layers with the head layer. Oops, I merged everything. Gotta release those clipping masks. Okay, merge my head with my body. Just kidding, my head with my visor. Might as well merge the head with the body. Let's commit. Or duplicate, group, and then keep a backup. That's always good. Okay, we get the body there. We'll clip the light onto the body. That'll show us where we have to mask this out a little bit more. I'll get rid of some of that. Get rid of some of that. Add this to the clipping mask for the head. Tone down opacities. But this is what I mean by relighting. Like here I'm going a little extra to add it in, but typically when you bring in something from the internet, you have to spend a little bit of time immersing your element into the scene, which in this case with the AI, it picked up a lot of that work. Sometimes it'll do a good job with the shadows. It actually did add a shadow for the foot there. We could see that. There's a foot shadow. I'll keep that in, but there should be more of a shadow. So typically I would go and do that. If I am just gonna quickly brush in another shadow over here. Why can't I see it? Oh, because it's masked out. Just make it into a new layer. There we go. Just so we part from the same point. I can take the character. I always just like to duplicate the character layer, or the person, or the object, or whatever it is. Some people paint a shadow underneath, and if it's soft, that works. If you need a harsh shadow, it's a bit more difficult. I'm trying to apply the layer mask. There we go. So I can transform the second guy into a flat version of himself, kind of flip him just like that and get him underneath. I know, like at that point, like, what is the point, right? I don't know. I like, if I were to do a different angle, let me see if I copy this layer so I can keep that. But of course, like what I'm doing here is specific to the scene, but if I needed a harsh shadow, I could just do distort, and then, you know, there we go. He's got a shadow. I just got to go to adjustments, take down the brightness, or go into levels and just crunch there we go. Crunch black into white. And then we can tune the opacity to meet the scene, or blur it out however we need. But since there's kind of lighting everywhere, it's a lot of soft lighting, I'm just going to go with a soft shadow. So if I paste in, there we go, that shadow I had before, do the same thing, image adjustment levels, crunch black onto white, then do filter, blur, and you could do Gaussian blur, or you could do motion blur. Maybe we'll do motion blur just for a bit of texture onto the ground, and then lower that opacity. Cool. And yeah, the car basically has one. It doesn't have a soft shadow, but I don't know. I don't have to do the same thing I just did for the person for the car because it's a bit better immersed. I can sample this and do a little soft. That's not very soft, but yeah, there we go. Lowering the opacity. Painting shadows or highlights, I'll do like at 20 or 30%, depends. But all right, there we go. So let's see this all together. Here's our original image, and here's two elements blended in. And actually, yeah, the AI did change the background of the city to kind of blend in the car and added a fence, continued this fence here. That is interesting. So say I wanted to get rid of that fence because that's where the car came through. I could just mask that out. I need to switch my masking brush to black, and there we go. Just get rid of that fence right there. There's something there I gotta watch out for. There we go. Switch back to white with X, paint there. alternating. Cool. All right, so there's our Photoshop result. Now let's try Blender. So go to Blender, and first things first, we go to our camera, and we add in to the camera an image, and that image is, you guessed it, the same one we were just messing with. So locate that image. It's the most poster looking one. There it is. So if we look through the camera, we have it as a background image. Now I do have the perspective plotter plugin in order to match my camera ratio to the image, so that makes it easier. I'll also do Shift A and add a mesh plane and hit R, Y 90 so that it's facing the camera, and then I'll just scale it up right there so it matches with the camera. So what I did there, which would be fair to mention, I had originally placed this camera beforehand. Let's just make it a flat 12 meters on the x-axis. That seems like a good amount of distance. And then rotation on x90 and rotation on z90, that's global, so that it faces along the x-axis, basically. And so when I threw in an image that is square as the background for the camera, and I threw in this square, and I scaled it up, it's gonna match the camera size because everything is square proportion, both the plane in here and the image I'm working with. So now I wanna bring that image back in as a material. So I can go over here and hit, instead of base color, hit image texture, and I should be able to just select that image I already brought in for the camera. If I go to material preview, I have my image, except I gotta rotate it. So I have my image on a plane, and I have my camera looking at the image. Perfect. Now I just need my ground plane, which perspective plotter is helpful for. I'm gonna try and bypass it, just because things can get a little tricky. I'm gonna try to keep it simple. So I'm gonna scale this plane up, bring it down, look through my camera, so that my plane essentially matches with the ground. What I'm looking for really is the horizon line. So wherever the floor would end, like about there, right? This orange line crossing through, that's where I'm guessing more or less the floor ends. That's kind of how I'm positioning this to meet my perspective. Okay, it's not a perfect science because there is still Photoshop. I mean, you could comp it in Blender, but I find that, at least like for my workflow, I have a lot of my comping nailed down in Photoshop, and it's just faster for me. Although everything I do in Photoshop can be created as a preset. Not all of it, but some of it can be set up as a preset for Blender. Once I get more pro at compositing, I'd love to implement something like that and then show you guys. Well, let's see over here. We'll do today's date. That's always a failsafe. Car compositing. Cool. So this differs in that I could use AI in Blender to kind of do something similar, but I'm not. The technique that I do is actually to get something more into a photoreal setting. So if I want to place a car over there, I'm actually going to bring in a model of a car. And I might have to adjust everything to the actual size of the model I bring in. Because if I go to Blender Kit, and I'll have my models, and I'll search for a car. So let's try this again for the DeLorean. Has someone made a DeLorean I can use on Blender Kit? No results. So we'll do car. And that would be cool to add into the background. Let's try that. I'll just throw that back there as a little added bonus. We got cops cars. I could add the word futuristic, but I don't want to like specify and cut out, like, I don't know, cyber car or oof, old classic Mercedes. This must have been from like, yeah, some not so great people made that car, but I mean, amazing car. If you get my meaning. But okay, so not about to do a history lesson. We'll go into I'm looking for a futuristic car. They're usually easier to come by. And loading these images has taken quite a bit of resources. That's almost futuristic, except I think that's a... is it a Corvette? I don't want a Corvette. Sorry to all you Corvette owners, but I don't want your car in here. Geez, I'm just gonna go ahead and add the word futuristic. I mean, there's some supercars, some abstract cars, and now we're not even looking at cars. So let's add the word futuristic here. I don't know if it's running the stream at the same time as searching in BlenderKit, but it's always an issue on stream. Like, watch it take a while to download once I actually pick something. All right, this is futuristic. Let's go with it. It's more pristine than I'd like, but maybe one tap. All right, we're going with that one. Thank you, Yorvin Luna Whiskey, creator on BlenderKit, for the spaceship. Okay, so we got a destroyed car back there. It looks 3D scanned. That's pretty cool. Let me get out of material preview, save some resources. All right, so I know, right? What the heck? There's a car on either side of a face. Like, that's all kind of weird. Before we get to fixing this and explain a little bit what's going on here, let's just add a person. Person. Somehow, like, everything but people show up when I search for people. It's very consistent in that. There we go. Yeah, this guy on the phone. That's the wearing a jacket. So if I go to right here, my preview, and I get into, I'm gonna have to get into material preview in order to see this image, at least for right now. So I want to start placing everything where it should be. So I'm gonna rotate my car here, my vehicle, and I'm gonna move it back. The important thing here is I'm gonna need to place the vehicle just in front of that surface, and I'm basically going to now parent that surface to the vehicle, and I'll explain why. And now I'm going to move the vehicle with the surface. To make this less confusing, I'm going to select my camera, and I'm going to go over into the image here, and I'm going to change the image from back depth to front depth. That way my camera image is always on top. So if I go into solid view, right, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm moving this car so that it's in place in the scene. Right around there's fine. Perspective's a little off maybe. I might have to change my camera perspective and move it back. So I'm going to give it a bit more focal length to that 50. I'm going to give it 70. That looks like the right angle. And then I'm going to move my camera back. Okay, that looks like a better angle. I'm going to lower the opacity on that image so you could see better. But what I'm doing is I'm essentially just moving the car with the image parented to it wherever I would want it in that image scene. I'm gonna have to move my ground plane down. Yeah, so it's right under the car. Yep, that looks more correct. Then I'll place my guy. Scale him down. Place him right in front. Let's see if that makes sense spatially. He should be right next to the car like that. That makes a bit more sense. Whoops. Yeah, this is where I should be working with two windows. One through the camera viewport and one in 3D. So, make sure this guy is on the ground and a reasonable size. And move him a little bit closer to the ATM. Right there. Okay. And then this car, I'm just gonna fake it, make it, whoops. This is on a bunch of different parts. So I gotta select the whole hierarchy. or the origin, or the, not the origin, parent object, which is this empty right here, this cross shape. So I can put that more or less on the ground plane and in the background, maybe even like further away. Yeah, see, this is where the perspective has to kind of get cheated when you're doing more than one thing. So it kind of works really well for foreground elements, and for background elements, you gotta do a little bit of different things. So why do I have my surface here? Let me unrotate that and move it back. Actually, no, I suppose I do want it rotated. So what this face is doing is it's not a backdrop at all. It's actually a lamp. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna use this surface to create that lighting effect on my subjects that I'm trying to bring over. So I don't have to do that in Photoshop, or at least like to an extent, it's already built into the object. So I'm gonna save my file, go to my image here. And so I've matched everything to the image associated with the camera. I'm gonna turn that off now. Just zero opacity. And that's what we're left with. We have this surface here, which I'm gonna go down and turn off visibility to, was it turning off the visibility? I think so. Let me first make it emissive. There was one way to have it so it doesn't show to camera. Display as texture, but it's not under visibility, it's not under viewport display. It would be under, oh my goodness. We'll come back to that. But for now, let's make it, it's already a material with that image. I'm just gonna go down to emission through the shader editor. So we're gonna open the shader editor and I'm gonna plug in this color node into the emission color. And so if I go to rendered view now, we're gonna be in Eevee, which is fine, because I'm just gonna preview this. You can see there, I'm turning up and down the intensity of the image. Now in Eevee, it's not doing much to my subjects. If I make it more intense, you'll notice that it gets brighter, but it doesn't do anything for the objects, because the Eevee render works a little bit differently. Like I'd have to set it to bloom for it to just kind of glow around the objects, which is not what I want. I'm gonna go with, actually, well, I'm gonna show the photoreal version. There's a cool thing we can do here to match the style of the image as well. But I'm gonna switch over to cycles and get that onto the GPU, of course. And now we see my object is getting lit, right? We got this purple hitting the car here. We've got the blue tones too. And here's the really important part. We're getting reflections, right? We're getting the reflection. I mean, here's a weird reflection because that's the background, not the tower. But we're getting some reflection of the tower there on the car, right? So ultimately, when you put that in there, this is a Batmobile. This is a Batmobile. Love that. Nice. Okay. And then, yeah, our character should be getting more intense blue. So in order to make this work, I'm going to have to move this surface along its own x-axis. So you'll notice here, I made the wrong screen rendered. If I hit GXX with the plane selected, I'm moving along the plane's x-axis. So I can put the ATM right in front of my guy, sort of. Again, this is just a lamp, so I can just do what I need to get this to work. This is not going to show up in my final image. There we go. He's getting blasted with blue light. I'm going to rotate that. And then I'm actually going to stretch it so that I get a little bit more reflection onto the car. Okay. It's not bad. Although I need some more reflection on the car because it is sort of ambient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a world color. Sample the color of the sky here. Maybe that far away blue that we have up there. Nice. And then tone that down. Have it be very, very subtle for the right side of the vehicle. Great. Okay. And then we have our car in the background. That's just going to get lit in blue. Maybe... I could go an extra step here, go into world, and set world as a, this would be, I don't want to muddy this by having the background be a gradient. Let's just keep that to blue. Okay, so now I'm pretty much prepared to render so that I can comp these things into my image. So let me hit solid, and I want to make sure that this renders onto the objects, but it doesn't actually show to the camera. So I'm going to go to the object properties, go to visibility. There we go. It was under visibility. Under ray visibility, we just turn off camera. So we're affecting diffuse, glossy, transmission, volume, scatter, and shadow. I could go, an extra mile even and just do my usual, let's do a sphere. Volumetric. So we add a sphere to the whole scene and make that a new material. We've got it here in the shader editor. Delete that. And then we add in with Shift a volume scatter. And then I'm gonna make it bigger so it eats the camera. There we go. If I set it to rendered, it's just pitch black because it's way too dense. As always, 0.01. We got a little bit of fog there. Cool. And actually we see the fog's catching some of the light from the image. So that'll be kind of cool to have that come through in the render. I'm really just interested in having the objects here, but that fade is kind of nice. Let's keep it. And then I don't want light on the ground plane. So I do want it to catch shadows. Oh, this is a perfect use case, except not really because it's a plane, not a light. But this is because my plane is actually clipping with that one. Because I do want the lights or the shadows of each of these to show up or to transfer through. I'm gonna use the AI to blend it. That's fine. So I'm gonna do no surface, no shadows. Cool. All right. So that should be, well, actually that'll still show up. There we go. Now it won't show up. That should be good to render, except now we need our render properties. So we go over into camera, scroll down, we go into our film. We set our film to transparent. That makes the background transparent so that we can save a PNG in RGBA format. A being alpha, transparent, so that it just lays on top of our existing image. So we'll do comped elements, accept, sure, that's a fine render, and we render that image. So definitely the Photoshop was much faster with the AI, but you know, if you're going for a specific style or if you need to use specific assets, so this is actually the ideal, right? Because you can create a bunch of different environments, which, you know, environments are great, but I feel like they don't need to be, unless you're using the same location several times, which you could still kind of get away with, because people are always looking just at the subjects, right? And if you're using consistently the same character, the same people, and the same vehicles, the same collateral, you can have that asset library built out, be very specific, use it in 3D, and then use AI to just build your backgrounds. Same way anime cartoons have been done, you know, same way a lot of, you know, visual effects or movies and TV shows have been done, where you paint in backgrounds and you're essentially moving the camera along the background, which is 2D, and you're compositing your subjects over the top. All right, there it is. So we could do image, save, and we'll save there our comped objects. All right, we go to our Photoshop file, and now we drag in our layer, and it just slaps on top. So there is a little bit of compositing, further compositing that we need to do here. Whoops. Bring that back. Okay. So first of all, I need to increase the contrast of these so it matches the rest of the image. Also, the fog kind of caused it to lighten the entire image a little bit. So I'm going to duplicate this actually. And I'm going to mask out my subjects out of this one. Cool. So now this is just my atmospherics, which shouldn't play a role in my foreground. It should just play a role in the background and on the edges of the building here. So what did the fog do for us out of Blender? This, which I think is neat. Makes the foreground pop a little bit more. Maybe I turn down the opacity. So I keep it like at 60. Yep. All right, then we have our subjects. So we want the reverse mask. I'm gonna hit Alt, click and drag to copy that mask over, and then Control I with that mask selected to invert the mask. And I wanna add to that mask with the black to eliminate the building. There we go. Building in the foreground. Cool. Can't eliminate my subject. Just want to keep the subjects in there. Ooh, I got rid of the car. That's fine. All right, so we go image, adjustments, and we start playing. We could do an adjustment layer, which might be better. We'll make this into a group so the adjustments only affect this group. We'll do curves. It's a bit more. Ooh, set it as a clipping mask anyway. There we go. So we make our darks darker so they match the darks on the left side of the image, right? Like I want the darkest portion here to match the darkest portion over there. So it could kind of be somewhere in that area. And then make the lights lighter. Great. My guy over here is a little bit too dark, so I'm going to take my brush on the mask layer and I'm going to change my mask to like a 10% opacity so I can slowly lighten this guy's legs little by little. There we go. And then make it smaller, hit X to change to white, and then just darken the backs here. Yeah, I need to wake him at home. Or I need to start doing these things on the iPad. I mean, when I usually will do just all my renders, like a whole render phase and then a whole compositing phase. And that whole compositing phase I'll do in the Photoshop app. Cool. Select this guy on that layer, hit Control J to duplicate just him. There he is. Just messed up my order layer, got everything back together. And I just wanted him so I could do image levels. You guessed it, make him into a shadow. So kind of crunch. It's fine that, let's see. Let's actually do this, make it really bright. There we go. Okay, then magic selection, or magic wand tool, select, delete, and select that in between and delete. Cool, and then Control I. And there's our shadow. Distort, ramp, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Should have duplicated, and then on one I'll do a soft blur. Oops, wrong layer. Oh, I accidentally pasted them up there. So Control Shift V to paste in place. That's what I want. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. There it is. So one that spreads further and the other one spreads less. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. There we go. Tweak those opacities. Okay, move the shadows closer under him. Yeah. Maybe just fainter even. And I'll just brush in some light contact shadows at 10%. All right. Yeah, our car definitely needs a shadow as well. So let's give it. I'll turn up my opacity to 40%. So we need our contact shadow all the way around. And then we're gonna get a little bit darker over here. Much darker. We'll switch it out to 100%. Oops. Put in 1000%. There we go. Is that, no, that's not pure black. What's going on? Because I'm painting under the fog, so maybe I gotta paint over everything else. Yeah, but that's... Maybe that is... Maybe it's not black. Let's see. Which it doesn't have to be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It could be like a dark blue. I could sample this right here. Just kind of do that color. There we are. But underneath, of course. All right. Cool. Another step we can take to match the style, because yeah, this is photoreal. This will work for great for photoreal scenes. But this is clearly not photoreal. And actually, I'm going to desaturate now that I'm looking at this a little bit closer. Hue saturation. Let's desaturate this some. There we go. Change the hue. That could be interesting. Push it more to a purple or a violet. Nice. Okay. So we can match the style a little closer by kind of identifying what is this really? Is this okay? So could it be, what is the AI doing? It looks like a 3D render, right? It doesn't look like paintbrushes or anything. It just kind of looks like simplified. Like we have a highlight here and a harsh shadow. So we're going to go into the filter gallery after I duplicate these layers and then merge them together and hide this whole other set. Okay. Yeah. I got this one to play with. We'll go to filter, filter gallery. In the filter gallery, I'm going to look for something that kind of makes this look the same style. So I'm going to zoom in and I have it over here. I'm really just looking at how the shadows and highlights are set up. Let me cancel out of this and set this up properly so I can zoom in on this area right there. Filter, filter gallery. There we go. Zoom in on my car here. Okay. So maybe in stylized, we have glowing edges. Texture is a little bit too intense. Sketch, not right. Distort, not right. Brush strokes, not right. Artistic. Maybe a soft version of artistic. We go to not splatter, not sponged. Dry brush, plastic wrap, watercolor. I'm gonna go with, is there an acrylic option? Paint dabs. Plastic wrap. Let's try the dry brush. Okay. So then smaller brush size. Brush detail. Less detail? Oh, we want way more detail. And texture 1. This one's way too intense. I wish I could make it even softer. Softer than dry brush. Do we have just a normal brush? Underpainting. That's weird. Oh, it loads pretty quick. I can just kind of click through them. I thought it'd be slower. Fresco? No, what was that? Cutout. Number of levels. Many levels. edge simplicity, less simplicity. I mean, doing an image trace in Illustrator would probably give me the right result. Edge fidelity. Okay. Yeah, more edge fidelity. Cool. So there you go. It's simpler, but it's not all the way there because there's a little bit of line work going on with this too. It's kind of making it look like comic bookish. Not line work, but there's like an edge definition there. So what I'm going to do is duplicate that layer again and do image, just kidding, filter, other, high pass. Now, I know that looks weird. I'm going to pick something that kind of defines the edges quite a bit. Set that layer to overlay, and then go to image, adjustment, maybe curves instead of levels. And just kind of play with this so it's well blended into the scene. So we actually took details away to kind of make this look better. Yikes. Maybe take it a step further even, duplicate that, and do filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Oh, this is my high pass layer. Nope, I want to do that to my original layer. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Nope, also my high pass layer. I have 2 high pass layers now? I do. Let's take one out. Go to the original, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And I just want to do it to where I lose the definition of the edges. They kind of blend into each other, like right there. I know it looks weird. We set that to overlay. Oh, I needed to duplicate. Whoops. Duplicate, don't just do it to the original one. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, lose your edges, set it to overlay, and then tone down the opacity. I almost like the photoreal result better. It does look kind of pasted in. If I get rid of these and I bring back the original. Yeah, I think the image trace in Blender, or not Blender, sorry, Illustrator would really give me some cool results. If I bring in these other ones and I even just set it to overlay, yeah, even, I mean, I guess if I keep those other layers I just created and I just set it to overlay over the original photoreal one, that looks really good, actually. Okay, and just to top it out, I always got to paint in some light. So I'll take a soft brush, set it to 15%, sample my sky over here, and then just kind of paint over the car to kind of give it those colors. This blue from the ground, so it kind of gets hit on the side of it with it. I'm just gonna clipping mask that to the group. There we go. That's like not enough color. Let's bring in some more color. That greenish. Set that to color. Nice. I feel like it's too bright now. We can always go back to our adjustment layers where I have my curves and bring down my highlights. I always think like zooming out, just like moving really far away, shows you what's wrong with it. That seems right. Cool. And there you have it. So we did 2 techniques. Obviously, this one... Where'd I go? Where's my car? There it is. And somehow I'm keeping my shadow. Where's that original car shadow coming from? I'm going fast here showing, and I'm totally neglecting my layer organization. Where is that? Where did I paint that black shadow? It's just loose here. Move it into the bottom of the second group. There we go. Okay. Option 1 from Photoshop AI. Quick, no control really. I mean, some, but a lot of just 2D painting and, you know, your usual masking and whatnot. I did a similar amount of masking and comping to the second iteration. But I had to do a little bit more work, I suppose, to get this comped in. Well, I did, because I needed to do the 3D program, bring it back in, and then comp it into here. Although I did get things that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise, such as, I mean, we're not noticing here, but we could notice, if we kept it photoreal, reflections of the building on the car, the actual lighting distribution of that image or that scene onto the object. So remember, I didn't tone this guy blue, which also maybe is something I should be doing here. You know, maybe to the car. Yep, just so it gets a little bit of blue light there. It's a bit more situated. I'm trying to make a fair comparison here. But yeah, I mean, we hit the guy a little bit with it. Make it a bit more intense. And it's really dependent on the use case. So like for a social media post or like something, you know, that's gonna go away soon, or like a proposal, something quick, rough and dirty, definitely I would go with the Photoshop AI. Like it gets the point across. Like I could spend a little bit more time cleaning this up and make it look better if I want to, but this was like taking elements that weren't in the image before and just having them blend in and be there like they look like they're supposed to be there in around 5 minutes. Now, it took me like 45 minutes to get this done, right? I mean, I'm also explaining and teaching, so like really it'd be faster if I were actually like going at it. But obviously the result is sort of more intentional, right? Like everything that I sort of did to place this in here, I had to do with intent, and I had to have, that's another thing, I kind of have to have done this quite a certain amount of times to have these techniques and kind of spot what I'm missing, what I need to work on still, you know, how I can make it look better. And then still, like, you always need a second pair of eyes to get that sorted out, to get it fully sorted out. I'd take away some of the purple here. There's like a bit too much purple on the top of the car, and change it for some of this peach. But yeah, I mean, which one would I end up sharing? Probably my second one. Like, not the AI one, but the one I did intentionally, because... I mean, not because I did it and did it intentionally, because I do think it's just objectively better. Because again, it's what intent you're giving it. Now, when Photoshop AI gets just as good as, not this, but like even better, where it just looks like the same artist that would have created this would have come in and paint over the top of it and made it perfect, like, great. We're not quite there yet, so depending on the use case, you know, I still go with this. And every time I turn it off and turn it back on, I always notice other things I could fix. But yeah, we're going to cut it there for today's stream. So thank you all for joining. I hope you found this useful. Compositing things in Photoshop or having to do them in After Effects too. That would be a whole other story, doing it for motion. But that's something that's always been something that all types of designers have had to do, you know, kind of know your basic Photoshop to kind of put things together. And if you know how to brush in light, if you know your different filters, if you know your different effects that you can do to do this compositing exercise, have one image blend into the other, you know, this is just the more intentional that comes across for a design. There's definitely a story here. Anywho, you can catch me tomorrow at 7 p.m. again. Not quite sure what I'm going to be covering tomorrow. I have quite a few topics I've been trying to get through. So yeah, I've just been kind of like picking the one I have best prepared at the moment and kind of running with it. So join me tomorrow for that. Always doing visualization, doing graphic design, doing 3D tools alongside with other creative tools for getting out your ideas, getting out your proposals, and developing bringing ideas into fruition. That's really it. Have a great evening, everyone. I'll catch y'all tomorrow's stream. Have a great night.